This video is about making DCPs inside of Resolve. You have to have the studio version, but you can generate a DCP for your feature or short if you're going to submit that to a film festival. But there's a whole bunch of unique specs, things about the package, and most importantly, the naming convention. So I'll go over some of these things and walk you through DCPs inside of Resolve. All right, DCP stands for Digital Cinema Package. Now what this is a unique package that has video and audio assets that are separate. So it's not like an H.264 or an MOV file where everything's combined. Everything's separated and there's a whole bunch of other control files. And they have certain specs for aspect ratio, 24 frame or high frame rate, and audio config. So let's walk you through how to set up your timeline in your project. Right now, I'm going to switch this back to 1920 1080. And for color management, I'm on DaVinci YRGB Rec 709 scene. So now our 1920 1080 is like a big square, but our source has these black bars on it. So if it was full frame, there would be no bars, but these are already pre-matted for a widescreen. So if we look at our source, it's 1920 by 800. And if you divide that, that's a 240 aspect ratio. So it's wider than it is tall, widescreen. So we need to take this picture here and zoom it in to match that aspect. Now, if you had a full frame, something like this, where it takes up the whole image, that is a 178. So if I click on our Graticule generator and the 187 is on there, we would need to go to 185. So you can see when I click that on, you get a little tiny sliver of a matte at the top and bottom, which is what we would need to render this to. So depending on the size of your picture, you either need to go 185 or 239 for digital cinema. Since this one's already widescreen, we're going to go 239. So I'll click on the 239 matte here, and you can see that fits the black bars or our active picture perfectly. So now let's zoom our canvas in to match our DCI spec. So I'm going to go back to the timeline here and go back to settings. And if we click on our timeline resolution, right down here, we have a couple options for DCI. We have 1998 by 1080, that's the DCI 185 flat, and we have 2048 by 858 DCI scope. We're going to choose that. And when I hit OK, you can watch where our picture is going to zoom in, but it's basically going to get rid of the black bars and just zoom it in to match that. Where the edges of our picture are here, left to right and top to bottom, are still going to be visible. So let's hit OK. And you can see now our picture is zoomed in to match that aspect ratio. So that's our sizing, and that's what we need to hit to be in spec for DCP. Now for audio, when we go over to our Fairlight page, certain places require certain audio configurations. Here I have left, center, right, low frequency effects, left surround, right surround. Now these are all labeled with an F in front of them because I made a fake 5.1 out of a stereo source. I'll link that video down below in case you don't have a 5.1 of your own. Typically when you deliver, they're going to want 5.1 or greater. So I took a stereo mix and made a 5.1 surround by doing some EQing and some panning and balancing, and it sounded pretty convincing compared to the provided 5.1, and it worked out pretty nice. So you can see audio tracks 9 through 14 are going out this quote fake 5.1 bus, which is bus 3 here. And if I play this track back, you can see the meters right here. We've got some 5.1 surround sound. I wouldn't say that is better than having an actual 5.1 mix done, but if you don't have anything else for a source, it's better than just giving a 2-channel. I've done this for professional projects, and it's worked where at least there's some kind of ambience going on in the theater. So check your audio config on what the layout is when you're going to deliver and make sure those are in the correct order. So now that's our audio and our video. Let's go to the delivery page. Under delivery, under video format, we're going to choose DCP. And for the codec, we're going to use Kakadu JPEG 2000, which is what our encode needs to be. There is an easy DCP option, but I think that's a licensed option for Resolve anyway. So the Kakadu JPEG 2000 is your included version. For type, we're going to go 2K DCI Scope, which is that 2048 by 858 raster, which is what we're looking at here. There's a couple check boxes for high dynamic range, for interop packaging. We have our resolution and frame rate to be timeline, 24 frame, 2048, 858. Bit rate, the default standard is 250, so I'm going to leave that. The slope rate control and quality, I think that's unique to Resolve. I've never had to use that on the other programs I've used for wrapping. So I left that on disable and automatic, just default settings. Under advanced pixels, I'm going to go square. Data levels, I'll go auto because it knows what we're working with because the color manage. And then color space tag and gamma, we're leaving it same as project because we're not converting from a different color space like XYZ or something like that, which is what DCPs are. And then I have bypass re-encode when possible. That doesn't apply here because we're not re-encoding a wrapped DCP. And then that brings us to composition settings. So this has a name, an issuer, options for the date, content kind. So to break down what all this means, you can also click on this edit button, and there's a lot of drop downs here, which sort of will help you. But let's go to a website to help clarify some of these things. And we go to ISDCF.com. I'll go to the homepage. This is a forum where these guys set standards and specs for globally released DCPs. They're out of Hollywood, or Northridge is where they have meetings. They have a whole bunch of info on here. They have technical docs, test content you could download. But most importantly here, they have the Digital Cinema Naming Convention. And even here it says how to name and decode digital cinema packages, plus the metadata and terminologies. So we're going to click on that. That takes us to this page, and you get this big long string here with all these breakout boxes. Now, this is every single parameter you could add. So if it's high frame rate, 2D, a bunch of other stuff, light levels, you won't have to deal with all that. But essentially, it gives you the rules of like the film title can't be longer than 14 characters. You'd have to abbreviate it. You're not supposed to use acronyms, things like that. But basically, we have title, content type. So this gives you the little code if it's a feature or a short or a trailer. And then we have this content modifiers in here, which probably wouldn't apply. This is more for temp releases, red band, things like that. We have the container or projector aspect, flat, scope, or full container. We have some parameters for the audio language, the subtitle language, the captions. We have territory and rating if it's a US release on, it's green band or red band. And we have the audio information here, 5.1, 7.1, or some of the other more complex audio. Then we have resolution, 2K, 4K, and then we have the studio. So typically if you were working on like a major release like Fox, you'd have TCF for 20th Century Fox. You can get the code over here from one of these drop downs if you are doing that. The creation date, the facility, which is basically the place you're working at. I don't know if there's a generic one for if you're doing it at home, but you can look here at the facility code guide. And then we have standard, is it interop or SMPTE, and whether it's 3D or not. And then the last is OV, which stands for original version. So if you're delivering your first version of something, that's what that is. And then version file is a whole other thing of a separate deliverable. But this box here and these drop downs will walk you through the naming. So if we go back to Resolve, that's essentially what this little colored section is doing in the composition name generator. And you can use some of these. You can override all this too if you want, like if you added something in and you didn't want the frame rate or whatever you happen to add, you can hit OK, but you can still go into this composition name and do like a manual rename here. So that's how you get your naming, your content type, whether it's a feature or a short. Issuer, I put MH for my house, but that would be wherever you're working. or the studio that's generating this, paying for it basically. And then you can have it work on single reels or clips with if you have multiple reels in your movie. So you select your reels if you're going to do that, and then you render. Basically, you get one audio and video MXF per reel. So if you got a 5-reel movie, you get 10 assets. All right, editing Chris here. If you want to do reels, which most movies are cut up into reels where you have a last frame of action and a first frame of action, you can just put a cut in your timeline. So normally it'd be the end of a scene, and wherever the next cut would be, that would be your next start of the reel. So here I just made a couple cuts here just to prove that when you render it out, you could see we have the corresponding video and audio MXFs that go along with the reel durations. So you render that out and send it out. And now let's take a look at the package. Here's the DCP package. So here's our video MXF and our audio MXF because I just rendered it like a 1-second chunk. So that is our picture all by itself with no audio, and our audio with no picture. But they play back together based on these control files in here. So we have an asset map, a CPL, a PKL, and a vol index. All these, I won't go into super detail, but they basically let the player know with these unique IDs here how many assets it's going to have, when it's supposed to play back which number. So with these weird identifiers here, or the longer string of numbers, it'll differentiate all the reels using that. And I will open that up just to show you why the naming matters. And then I'll open the CPL. This is basically the control file for the DCP package, or it's called a composition playlist, kind of like a playlist in iTunes. But you can see it has a UUID as well. So let's say you had 2 versions of your feature or short. Let's say version A and version B. If you wrapped version A and they were playing back with this UUID, you would know regardless of the title, hey, we're looking at this particular version. So maybe you have a censored and uncensored version. You know that with this ID, it's unique to this particular wrap. And then here's the name where it says annotation text. That's going to match your name that you gave it down here. This is where the naming convention comes in, so there isn't a acronym or something like that, and lets the operator know, hey, this is Tears of Steel. It's a feature. It's scope. It's English. It's 5.1. And then down here shows you where all the reels line up. So here's that unique ID for the video portion. Here's the unique ID for the audio. And it's saying they're 24 frame, how long they are, start at frame 0, play this reel with this reel. And so if you have them all laid out, it would be every reel of your movie, the list would continue and it would play them in order. And basically that's what tells the player how to play the package. So that's about it. That's all your components here. Now let's talk about checking your DCP. Let's say you wrap it and you want to make sure it works. Now this is all without getting encrypted. If you encrypted it, you would have to have keys. That basically locks down your DCP, where you would have to issue a key for a player to play at a certain time and basically give it permission. That's how they keep the security at larger chains, where you can't just copy the movie or play it. Now, if you do want to check it, you can do what we did here. This second video track here is actually the DCP. If I click D and activate it, you can see there's absolutely no sizing or color shift going on our image. And if we look at the asset here, we can see it's 2048 by 858, 24 frame, JPEG 2000. So that's exactly what we wanted. I didn't line the audio up, but basically you could start a new project like this here. I made one called DCP check, and then I opened that up, drug my audio and video in and hit play, lined them up, made sure it was cool. Now, if you want to get outside of Resolve and say, let me make sure it plays back on an outside source, you can go to this website called DCP-O-Matic. If you go to download, they actually have a player. So I downloaded this player 2, and open that up. And this basically is like a software player. So here it is. It doesn't have anything loaded. I'm going to go File, Open. And then you navigate to wherever your content is. You don't have to choose an asset or anything. Just go to the folder. Here's our package we were looking at a minute ago. I'm going to hit Open. It's going to load if it works correctly. And you can see here it says DCP. It's got the naming that we were just talking about. It says 2048 by 858, which is correct. Frame rate 24. Audio 6 channels, no subs. And if we hit play, we can watch it back and listen to it just to verify that it works outside the Resolve system. And that's it. Now, the only other thing to be aware of is when you deliver to these places, some of them have drive formatting specs that you're supposed to hit. I think ExFAT is pretty universal, and I believe places take that, although some of them want crew drives in the XT3 format. So you just have to be in communication with wherever you're sending your package. But this is an overview on your sizing, your frame rate, and your surround. And like I said, I'll link that video on how to make 5.1 or something suitable from a stereo mix, because not everybody has 5.1 mix for their project. And that's about it. So if you have any questions on any of this, just leave them down below in the comments. I'm always reading and I'll try to answer them as I see them. And if you stuck around this long, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video.